Hi class, it's Mr. Marshall here. So today I want to talk to you guys about the Olympics. I've always been really interested in the Olympics. I've always loved watching the Olympics on TV. And I've had the opportunity to travel to some of the sites where the Olympic Games have been held. I went to Beijing in China to see where the Olympics were held, but it was so smoggy and there was so much pollution when I visited Beijing to see the Olympic sites. There was so much pollution that you couldn't even see across the street. But I did get to go to the swimming pool where Michael Phelps won all those gold medals, and it was pretty cool to see those Olympic stadiums. I also got an opportunity to visit the Olympic Stadium in Seoul, South Korea from the 1988 Games. Then we got a chance to go to Olympic Stadium in Berlin where the 1936 Olympic Games were held. But the Olympics actually originate 2,700 years ago in southwest Greece is where the Olympics originally began. And this was a religious festival. So it was an athletic competition, and you can still visit the original stadium that held up to 50,000 people. But ultimately, this was not just an athletic competition, it was a religious festival. And it started off as just a one-day event. And people would stop what they were doing all over the Mediterranean basin to travel to Greece in a rather rural setting to celebrate this religious festival and watch these athletic competitions. But there were some restrictions on the spectators. Only men, boys, and unmarried girls were allowed to be spectators at the original Olympic Games. So married women were not allowed, and that's probably because a lot of the original Olympic Games competitors were naked. And so some of these original events include boxing and wrestling and running, and all of these events were competed in naked. And one of these events is pretty interesting. It's called pankration, and it's a lot like MMA. So it's a mixture of wrestling and boxing. But the wrestling in the ancient Olympics is a little different than the wrestling today. Matches only ended in submission. And in boxing was a little different too because there were no weight classes. Can you imagine no weight classes in boxing? So the ancient Olympic Games were pretty different. They had no medals. Instead, they would get a wreath for victory. The ancient Olympics were an excellent spectator event. People would travel from all over the Mediterranean basin, and they were granted an Olympic truce. So no matter what wars or battles were being fought, when it was time for the Olympics, everybody laid down their weapons and they allowed people to travel freely. So there was something called an Olympic truce. So everybody stopped fighting and people were allowed to travel openly to go to the Olympic Games. So the Olympics have always kind of had this idea associated with them of being peaceful and bringing people together. So it was a very spectator-friendly event. They'd have 24-hour-long barbecues, and it was an awesome thing. And it made people more Greek to go to the Olympics because ancient Greece was made up of people from all over the world. So what is it that made you Greek? One thing is going on a journey to be a spectator at the ancient Olympics.